Of course, this week the Supreme Court ruled in favor of the Affordable Care Act, saying that the individual mandate was a tax and is constitutional, not a penalty. What impact will that have on American businesses and the economy? Joining me right now is Simon Johnson, professor of entrepreneurship at MIT. Simon, it's very nice to have you on the program.
Nice to be with you.
Thank you so much for joining us. So let me kick it off with this crucial ruling from the Supreme Court upholding the Affordable Care Act. Is this a positive because we have some certainty, or do you think this is going to still be sort of an uncertainty and a new tax for business, keeping them unwilling to add heads to the payroll?
Well, I don't think you know before the November election how this is going to turn out. The November election is going to be more about competing visions for healthcare, the Obama vision and the Romney vision, and perhaps after that resolution we'll get greater certainty.
And so the election, of course, is going to be much about this. Already you heard Governor Romney come out and say, look, you know, if you want to get rid of Obamacare, get rid of Obama. I mean, things like that. So do you think that's going to be a positive for the Republicans or a positive for the Democrats?
I think it's a bit of a positive for the Democrats because it means that they didn't waste more than a year of their time in the Obama administration. The Supreme Court has backed them up on the key constitutional issue, so they have something to show that they did in this first administration.
Let me switch gears and ask you about this recent petition that you brought to the board of the Fed, the Federal Reserve, asking for the removal of Jamie Dimon from the New York Fed because the New York Fed is responsible for investigating the losses suffered by J.P. Morgan Chase's disastrous bad trades in London. Do you think that you'll be successful in this bid to get Jamie Dimon off of the New York Fed?
Well, I think it depends on how big the losses are. At the moment, with the expansion, the increase, people are talking about perhaps $5 billion today. People a week or two ago thought it was just $2 billion. To have the New York Fed as the primary leader in that investigation, while Mr. Dimon sits on the board of directors of the New York Fed, is extremely uncomfortable. I don't think there's anywhere else in corporate America or in non-corporate America where that kind of position, relationship, appearance of a potential conflict of interest will be tolerated.
Now, they will say that the Fed has a mandate to have business people on the board, and that they want business people on the board to actually weigh in. But you're saying it's because of specific J.P. Morgan trading loss, and that's who's investigating it.
That's correct. The Federal Reserve Act does specify that some bankers should be on the boards of regional Feds, and that's an interesting question. We should discuss whether or not going forward that's a good idea. But at the moment, that's the law. But it doesn't say that you should remain on the board if various inappropriate or potentially inappropriate or seemingly inappropriate activities are going on. In fact, there's a long history of directors of the New York Fed resigning when it questioned or threatened the integrity of the Federal Reserve System to have them continue in those positions.
It really feels like whether it's the J.P. Morgan laws or the markets, you know, trading so volatile, more and more investors are feeling like rigged, that they're not getting a fair shake. We're now hearing that a key interest rate, the Libor, may have been fixed by Barclays and other banks. Is the retail investor just facing too many obstacles in this market?
Well, it's not just the retail investor, Maria, it's also corporate investors. I know a lot of corporate CFOs who think that Wall Street banks are somehow acting in the interest of the customers, for example, with complex derivative deals. What you begin to understand with the details of Barclays rigging for Libor, which they've now conceded they did, you begin to see that they're rigging it against even their big corporate customers and basically ripping them off.
Unbelievable. And what are the ramifications? I mean, the retail investor has not been in this market for some time now. Do you think there's a catalyst on the horizon that brings the retail investor back?
No, I think the overall macro situation around the world is going to become more complex. The European situation looks very, very difficult, and it's extremely scary to people who don't spend all of their days thinking about what the possible outcomes could be.
So what's your expectation for the U.S. economy rest of the year and into 2013?
Well, it depends very much on the timing of the European crisis, and the timing is hard to predict. I think there's going to be a slow recovery going into November. This is obviously going to be a problem for President Obama and his re-election. Early next year is also going to be really quite difficult, and if the Europeans don't turn the corner, this is something that we could still be talking about in 2014.
Here we are at the Aspen Ideas Festival here in Aspen. Lots of really smart people discussing sort of the issues of the day, the important issues of the day. What's the best idea you're coming away from here with so far?
Well, I heard a prominent Republican yesterday suggest that tax revenues could be increased as part of a fiscal deal. And if tax revenues are really in play, if that's where the Republicans are in Congress, that's extremely good news. I don't, by the way, believe it. I don't think they really want to do that deal yet, but that's huge.
We really have a huge problem on our hands, don't we, with this fiscal cliff? Tax cuts expiring at the same time that spending programs are expiring. Do you think we'll get an agreement on that before the election?
Not before the election, no. There will be agreement, I think, after the election. We're not going to drive off a fiscal cliff. The big issue is the extension of the Bush-era tax cuts at handle, and that's going to depend on exactly the outcome of the November election. And there are some scenarios that could be actually quite good for medium-term fiscal consolidation in the United States, and some that could be absolutely disastrous. So we'll learn a lot, we'll see a lot the last 6 weeks of this year.
All right, Simon, we'll leave it there. Good to have you on the program.
Thank you.
Thanks so much, Simon.